Good morning. I'm joined by Ian White, CEO of Crux Careers. Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
Yeah, good morning, David. Hi, very well. And yourself, thanks?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you.
Good, good, good.
We've just had a very honest and frank chat about the state of the union of the property industry at the moment. One of the biggest challenges, I suppose, over the last year as a whole, has been around recruitment and careers because the industry as a whole has had a very productive year. And there's been a lot of commissions going through different pipelines, and people have been very hesitant about leaving jobs and moving jobs. Do you see this as a sort of a seminal moment now in sort of the recruitment industry?
Not so much the recruitment industry. I think it's a seminal moment in how estate agents need to go about attracting, because this problem doesn't exist in necessarily other industries. The estate agency sector is fairly unique in the fact that we've had this boom period that's created lots of stress and problems on the workforce. You've obviously we've had the pandemic where people have been off ill. We've had the pandemic where people have had to isolate. We've had the work from home. We've had the lockdowns and everything else. And agencies have had to come through all of that at a time where key players who may or may not have been on the market to move are earning so much money or have got such big pipelines, the desire to move may be waned, or because they've been earning such good money, they're now in a financial position to make different decisions, whether that be travel, start up on their own, look at the self-employed models. So the poor old traditional guys in the middle seem to be being squeezed in every aspect, really. So, but I think the seminal moment is how do agencies respond to that to make themselves an attractive employer again? The bit that we're actually going through at the moment in terms of, let's call it a lack of candidates, I think that's just a window in time. I don't think that's necessarily, that'll be cyclical. There are lots of other industries that are suffering and those people will retrain and they'll provide some good opportunity. In fact, if anything, some of the best recruits we've had for our clients have been outside of the industry.
It's interesting that. Do you think our industry is now seen as more attractive to people that had previously sort of overlooked a career in estate agency?
I don't know whether it's more attractive, really. I just think it's more accessible because as people have got vacancies they can't fill, they're more likely to expand their horizons about, we have clients that are absolutely adamant they must be experienced because they don't want to do the training, they don't have the facility, they must be experienced agents. Well, that's fine, but that's quite a slim pool of, that's slim pickings. Others are actually very categoric that they want anything but experienced people. They want people from outside of the industry because their perspective is they'd rather train them in their systems and processes, their mindsets. And as long as they come with transferable skills, they'll bring in a fresh gene pool of thoughts and ideas into the industry because they'll say, well, this is how we deal with customer service, blah, blah, blah. So, and then you've got the people in the middle, it'll be an either or just depending on the candidate at the time. But it's very, very different. And I can't, I don't think either policy is right or wrong. I think what's right or wrong is the leader of the business in the first place and what they do when the person comes in.
Yeah.
And that really is.
That makes all the difference, really, doesn't it? In how engaged that person then becomes within the business and whether they grow from in that position. So just looking at the background of Crux, perhaps just give us, for those that don't know, a bit of a potted history of where, your history until this point and what your plans are for the future.
Well, look, Crux was initially formed from my client base, some of whom are investors. They are part owners in Crux, where they were perhaps dissatisfied with the traditional recruitment model where, a recruiter would use a job board or whatever it was they would to find a candidate. They'd send the candidate in pretty much unfiltered. Somebody at HQ had to filter through the CVs, see 10 people to employ one of them. And at the same time, the same recruiters were pinching staff in the background and all those sorts of things. So we created it from the estate agent's perspective. So some of the behaviours, we've eradicated. We've made them. They're just not part of our DNA. They're contractually written. written within our terms that, you know, if these things happen, there is a compensationary measure that we'll immediately pay out on and would pay out on if it happened. We accept human nature's human nature. Somebody will err at some point.
Yep.
Touch wood, that hasn't happened yet, but if it does, I would pay out with almost happily, you know, because it would prove the point that we are and I am serious about dealing with people properly and not pinching their staff or putting people in and then tapping them up after the rebate period. So all of those things. So that's how we came about, but it was to serve a very small number of agents that were actually partners, and instead of their money going out to other recruiters, they were going to feed their own company.
Yeah.
But of course, we're a very incestuous business, as you know, David. Everybody knows everybody, and you know, more and more people started to say, "Well, look, would you work with us? Can you help us find candidates?" Et cetera, et cetera. So, you know, we decided after about 4 or 5 months of trading, let's turn this into a full commercial entity. And we recruited some more people into the business. We expanded, if you like, and now we are an open for business recruiter, but with a very, very different twist in both the charging options and the way we think about it. So we are not just a recruitment business. We're what we call a full circle people business. So we provide services and consultancy to avoid the vacancy in the first place. So our first objective is to make our recruitment side redundant by making sure that the leadership, the culture, systems and processes, the reward and pay, you know, the monitoring and feedback to these people, we can provide all of that stuff to try and minimize leavers. If in the event there is a leaver, we have a rescue service that says, well, look, let's see if we can rescue the resignation for you and make it irrelevant. We have the recruitment piece that says, okay, there's now a vacancy. Let's now go to the market and find somebody. We have a training and development thing. So Agency Mentors is a brand you might be aware of. That's now merged with Crux.
Okay.
So it's now in effect Crux
Well,
training.
I was going to ask you, because that very unique take on people trying to leave or people being unhappy within a role, and you trying to sort of change the mindset perhaps of the management and also provide that support around that person leaving. To me, that's where Agency Mentors always had somebody that could advise on that. So it seems like a very happy marriage, that.
Yeah, it became very logical that there was no point in having two brands, two sets of marketing costs, two sets of most of the shareholders were the same in both businesses because they were evolved for the same reasons from the same client base. Yeah. So yes, so Agency Mentors in theory is no more, but Crux has taken up the mantle of that piece. So you've got at the front end is let's avoid the vacancy and make sure everything's sweet and light in the business. Then you've got, okay, if worse comes to the worst, we have to recruit. Then you've got the piece that says, right, once we've got the people that either we've got or we've recruited, let's train, develop, and mentor them to be able to perform to the best possible ability they've got. Mindset training, technical training. We don't do compliance. You know, that's the one bit we don't touch. And then at the end of that, you've got, okay, well, if in order to run a happy ship and everything else, or if there's a problem, we have a HR subscription model with 3 different tiered levels where smaller businesses that can't afford their own HR resource, similar to some of the things like you've seen with Peninsula, we have a HR resource that gives them a library of all of the documents they're going to need, the processes they need to follow, expert access to absolute HR experts who can avoid court hearings, deal with settlements, make sure you follow the right processes, and depending on the size of your business, that you know there's subscription models that give you access to really in effect your own outsourced HR resource at a very low cost. The big difference on that particular HR one is that there's no contracts. We don't have self-renewal on our contracts. Again, it was sort of brought around at the request of our clients. They've been too used to signing up with one company that wanted you to sign for 3 or 4 years. And at the end of those 3 or 4 years, if you didn't pick up the phone, and who would? Because HR goes out the window unless you've got a problem.
Yep.
The contract self-renews for another 3 or 4 years, which we've since discovered is very difficult to legally, typically they'll back down. But anyway, so that's starting to pick up pace. That's quite new. So for us, it's a sort of circle piece around, well, let's get the environment right to avoid the vacancy. If we have to bring people in, great. Let's use proper filtered, good business to business ethics around how you do business with people on a recruitment side of things. we've then got the training development, mentoring people to create peak performance, and that's also part of the retention as well. And then you've got the HR piece that people can subscribe to.
So am I right in saying, Ian, that this is not just for people who wish to find roles in a state agency? This can also be for people involved in the industry as a whole, so prop tech suppliers as well. You're placing those sort of job roles as well.
Yeah, the recruitment side deals with estate agents, suppliers to estate agents, and mortgage brokers. Those are the three areas where we have expertise. And when it's the prop tech businesses, the recruitment we do for them is focused on selling and account management. We don't do the technical IT guy, the coder. Yeah. We don't do any of that yet. I don't think we ever will, to be honest, but I suppose it's a space we have been asked. We do marketing as well. So we fell into it by accident, really, because I think there's a demand. A lot of agents are now bringing a marketing resource internally. So we probably placed about a dozen marketing people, right the way from interns up to, somebody a little bit more senior, depending on the size of the business. And although we never set out to do that, that sort of just happened. It was a request. We started to build a database of marketing people, and we're able to add two and two together in those circumstances. And the other area where we differ significantly, David, is on our charging model, because you can use us in one of three ways. You pay us a monthly subscription, and then the cost of getting the person in is significantly lower, but you pay that subscription whether you're looking or not. And we're constantly building talent pools in your area, so that when a vacancy comes up, we're ready to go. And that basically is £100 a month, and then the actual recruitment fees are negligible for the person, in the hundreds of pounds, not the thousands.
Not the thousands.
You can pay us traditionally in the same way that a normal recruiter would be, that you pay us a percentage of the salary, and you pay that in a lump when they join, with a rebate if they leave within certain periods. Or you can pay us monthly, and if the person leaves, you stop paying us until the bill is cleared. So the bill might be £2,500. You pay that over 9 months, but if they leave on month 3, you stop paying.
Right. Okay.
So there are three financial methods, but all of those 4 modules, the sort of consultancy, recruitment, training and development, and HR, they are completely independent of one another. You can have all of them, you can have none of them, you can have the one at the beginning and the end, you can just use recruitment. You can just use the training. You don't have to have all 4, and most people don't. They typically get involved with us in one sense, and then the relationship evolves through trust into other areas.
I think any business owner, particularly in an estate agency, if you've ever spent any amount of time advertising a job role yourself, if you put it on any of those job boards, and there's numerous, you can do it very, very cheaply. The sort of quality of candidate that you're getting to see is often extremely poor, and not really focused on our industry. So I suppose one of the key benefits of coming to people like you is that you would have already spoken to these people, checked out their background, understood whether they're a good fit for that particular business.
Yeah, less than 4% of applications reach the point where we would present them to a customer as a possible recruit. So we're putting a line through 96%. Now, some of them might then be suitable. They're on our database and might be suitable for something else later on, but they wouldn't be suitable for that role. So we speak to, interview, and in most cases produce a Zoom film like this, a quick 5-minute conversation with the candidate, that if we feel they're right, we then go to that level. If we still feel they're right, then we'd send them to you, David, for example, to say, right, here's a candidate we've spoken to. We think they fit your role. We're 1.9 interviews per job offer, and I would challenge any other recruiter to even be close to that ratio.
Yeah, that's
because
hit rate.
I think, bearing in mind we try to build it from the estate agent's perspective, one of the things that bugged me was spending half a day or a day interviewing, and everyone I knew before they'd even sat down weren't even going to be, there's just no way they were going to get a
remotely suitable. Yeah.
And the cost of my time or somebody else in the business's time is greater in reality than the cost of the recruitment. Now, that's hard for some to see. I understand that, but what they could do with that day that, you know, they could go and win 2 or 3 instructions. Well, that's far greater than our costs.
Thank you, Ian. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks, David. Thank you.